Well, welcome everyone to this webinar, where we will be learning how to build commerce storefronts with Next.js and Composable UI. My name is David Azoulay, Director of Product at Orium. We are North America's leading composable commerce systems integrator, and I'm thrilled to guide you through this journey of creating dynamic, scalable online stores using Composable UI. So for today's agenda, we will look at Composable UI more broadly and also get pretty technical. I will talk a little bit about composable commerce, why we built Composable UI, and what it is exactly. And then Danny Lake, our product architect here at Orium, will do more of a technical deep dive, walking us through Composable UI's code, documentation, configuration, and how to configure it. We will also have a Q&A at the end of the session, so feel free to submit your questions through the chat, and let's get started. So this session is tailored for all kinds of professionals. Whether you are an aspiring e-commerce developer, an experienced designer, an architect, eager to learn more about the latest tech, you're in the right place. Today, we will gain insights into the world of Composable UI, what it is, why it's a game changer, and how it's used to create innovative commerce storefronts. And we'll also dive into how to build a composable architecture, discover its advantages, and learn how to customize it for your business-specific needs. But this webinar isn't just about learning new concepts. It's also about practical application. You will learn how to navigate and leverage the Composable UI toolkit, ensuring that you can not only follow best practices, but also innovate and implement them in your projects. So let's get started on this journey with Composable UI and unlocking new possibilities for your next e-commerce project. So let's start with, what is composable commerce? It's crucial to understand the significant shift that's currently transforming the e-commerce landscape. Historically, companies have depended on monolithic systems. These are large, all-in-one platforms that helped companies get their online store up and running quickly, but over time have proved to be inflexible, challenging to update. And in response, some businesses have developed their own custom e-commerce solutions. But over time, even these custom e-commerce solutions have proven to become bloated, overly complex, and slow to make changes. And that's a problem because the market is always changing. Customers' expectations continue to rise, as we have seen during the pandemic. And so businesses need to become very agile and capable of making changes to their e-commerce experiences very quickly in order to stay competitive. Now imagine an architecture that's not just a single block of stone, but more like a set of building blocks. This is where composable commerce comes into play. It breaks down the e-commerce experience into modular components that can be independently integrated and replaced without disrupting the whole. This modular approach is crucial for businesses that need to pivot quickly because it allows them to roll out changes or introduce new features at the speed of market demand. Today's consumers also want personalized shopping experiences that are tailored to their needs. Composable commerce aligns perfectly with this trend by enabling retailers to craft unique customer journeys and touchpoints. And the real advantage here is the ability to adapt. Whether it's incorporating user feedback or responding to new shopping behaviors, composable commerce empowers businesses to stay ahead of the curve. That's a little bit about composable commerce. Now let's talk a little bit about Composable UI and why we launched this project. So Composable UI was launched primarily as a learning opportunity. It's an invitation for organizations to step into the world of composable commerce, introduce this concept, but also showcase its practical application and demonstrate how you can build a composable commerce architecture, especially from the front-end perspective. And let's not stop at theory. Let's also put Composable UI into action. It's an accelerator. It provides you with a front-end framework that encompasses all standard customer experiences right out of the box. Think of it as a toolkit at your disposal, complete with application code, integrations, documentation, and a cohesive design system. So this is not just about getting you started, it's about propelling you forward with speed and confidence into the world of composable commerce. Lastly, there's innovation. That's where your vision comes to life. Composable UI isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a canvas for creativity. It facilitates the creation of custom e-commerce experiences and allows seamless integration with the headless services of your choice. This level of customization means that your storefront can be as unique as your brand, ensuring that your customer experiences are not just transactions, but are memorable interactions. Now, what is Composable UI exactly? Composable UI is a foundation for building e-commerce storefronts in a composable commerce world. It's packed with best practices and best-in-class technologies that we here at Orium have been perfecting over the years. For example, it uses React and Chakra UI for UI components and styling, Next.js for server-side rendering and static site generation, TypeScript, React Query, and TRPC for managing server state and end-to-end type-safe APIs. But the true power of Composable UI lies in its integration capabilities. It comes pre-integrated with several services and provides patterns to integrate with others. For example, it's integrated with Azoulay to provide powerful product search functionalities and Stripe for secure payment processing. But it's not just about what it comes with, it's about what you can add to it. Composable UI can integrate with any service, be it headless commerce, content management systems, or other mock services. This flexibility is crucial for tailoring solutions that meet the specific needs of your business and customers. Finally, the essence of Composable UI is its community-driven approach. Always free and open source under the MIT license. We believe in the power of contributions, and this openness not only fosters innovation, but also creates a collaborative environment where developers from around the world can share, improve, extend the capabilities of Composable UI. In fact, we've already received several contributions for improvements and integrations and anticipate more in the future. Now let's dive a little bit more into Composable UI. Composable UI provides everything you need to build modern and performant e-commerce sites quickly. Starting with the storefront code, Composable UI is a React and Next.js application, technologies known for their efficiency and developer friendliness. It uses a monorepo code structure, which keeps things organized, but also enables a unified workflow that's optimized for performance. And deployment is a breeze. It's got one-click checkouts to Netlify and Vercel, and it's Docker ready, catering to a diverse range of deployment preferences. There is also a design system starter kit. It comes with a Figma design kit that sets a solid foundation from going from design to code. It has reusable UI components and theme tokens, ensuring consistency and accelerating your design process. And with Chakra UI, it promises a responsive and accessible user interface. Integrations are key to any commerce platform, and Composable UI offers a suite of integration options. It comes pre-integrated with Azoulay, Stripe, Google Tag Manager. It's also integrated with mocked CMS and commerce services that can be replaced with your own, and many other integrations, including Consia, Voucherify, and Klaviyo. Last but not least, documentation is the backbone of any developer's journey. With Composable UI, you have access to complete DocuSource-powered documentation, which not only guides you through the development process, but also allows for quick reference and easy deployment. Inside Composable UI, you'll find more than just code. You'll discover a cohesive, integrated, and thoroughly documented ecosystem designed to empower you to build, deploy, and scale e-commerce sites with efficiency and precision. Now, enough talking. Let's get right into it with this technical deep dive. And I will pass it along to Danny Lake to take it over from here.
Thank you so much, David. So the first thing I want to do is just really brief introduction to this GitHub repo, and then I'll get right into a storefront walkthrough. But before I do that, I'm Danny Lake. I'm the product architect here at Orium, which means I get to work very closely with David, and I get to build e-commerce, composable commerce accelerators. And this was one of those outputs we wanted to share with the world for the reasons David iterated earlier of maybe you're brand new to Next.js, or you're comfortable with Next.js and you're on a monolithic e-commerce platform right now and you're looking at options at different paths forward. And composable commerce is definitely the trend and where things are going for that flexibility David mentioned earlier, and scalability and maintainability. And you get this headless storefront that's put together with these UI React components and Next.js. And you can put together this full experience and then take it and make it your own. So we're really excited. And as David mentioned, we've got to work with a few organizations in the space to help them integrate their offerings into composable UI, which I think reinforces the composable commerce architecture, because you can bring one of those integrations in, you can swap it for something else. And as David mentioned earlier, we do have a couple pre-built integrations with Azoulay and Stripe. So if you're on the README and you want to follow along, I'm just going to scroll down to the resources section here in table of contents. So these are the main key links here that you might want to bookmark. The first thing I'm going to do is pop into the storefront, which I've got now here. So I really want to try to paint a picture in your head of what composable UI is, because all the theory, I want to help connect all the dots. Think of this storefront as a collection of UI components and customer experiences that are put together with Next.js, and they use TRPC and React Query for the data fetching and data mutation part of this. And we even have an all the way to a checkout experience, which I'll get to, and you can actually pay with a credit card with Stripe. So this is using mock data sources, but in a sense, it's a real working storefront. You can deploy it to Vercel or Netlify. I'll walk through one of those deployments later on. And then you can have this storefront ready to go and start really learning and investigating. If you're exploring working with a certain search vendor or payment processing vendor, this tool can really help you show your organization and your team, or just yourself, what that might look like in a production environment. So this is the homepage of the storefront, composable.com here. So let's just walk through these components. And everything we built here in composable UI is geared for mobile responsiveness. So as I shrink the screen down, which I'll do here and there, you can see that in action. And that really comes with Chakra UI. Really helps your developers implement that responsiveness. It's a really great developer experience working with Chakra UI. And it also has great components out of the box. So you can work on building this experience with Chakra UI's base level UI components. So you can focus on your customer experience and your goals instead of maintaining and building a UI component library. So the first thing on the homepage here is this header bar with some links here, and I'll jump into these. These go to our product listing page, powered by Azoulay. And then we have a couple drawer components here. If I want to log in or I want to view my cart, again, these components were built with the Chakra UI drawer component. If I hit tab here, I can't get out of this component, which that just comes for free with Chakra. If you try to build this component yourself, there's a lot of things you need to think about under the hood to support screen readers, keyboard input, and things like that. Once I scroll down here and I start looking at these components, this is the main content of the page. And as I scroll down here, you'll see quite a few components coming up. So all of these are what I call content management system driven components. Their data is all coming from the mocked CMS that we have in place, and I'll show you how that works a bit later on. And these components, they're ready to take input from wherever your content might come from, be it a static JSON file, something like Content Stack or Contentful, or even a third-party custom API that you have content on right now. You might even want to query your monolithic API for content. As you're transitioning to something like using a headless storefront, you could hit that API and drive these components with that data. So there's quite a few here to check out. We have one here for product promotions. If I click on one of these, it'll take me to the product page. And then at the very bottom, we have the footer. So let's dive into the e-commerce part of this. So I will now start working with exploring the catalog of demo products that we have in our fake commerce engine. And then I'll even go through to checking out with one of these. So I'll just pop into accessories here and see this Algolia. This is all of these UI components are fully customizable. They live inside the Composable UI Next.js storefront, and they're driven by the Algolia API. So the nice part about that is we're sending queries and filters to Algolia, and it's just responding with telling our UI what to display. So working with Algolia is fantastic, and we decided to build this Algolia integration directly into the storefront because it's actually easier to use their service than to make a fake product listing page experience that we thought would provide very little value. So if you want to learn about Algolia, this is an excellent, excellent way to check that out. And I'll pop into the women here because there's the most products in this section here. So inside the product grid itself, you can see we have a 4-column layout right now. If I want to, I can shrink these down and change my experience. I can also change the sort if I want to sort by name or price, low to high. And on the left side, this is where the power of Algolia really comes in. So even when I was changing the sort, this was a new query hitting the Algolia API, and it responds that fast. So now if I start filtering, say, by brand, that was a brand new query to Algolia API, and it responded very, very quickly here. So the user experience of exploring your catalog of products is now very, very high. It feels like I'm using a native app on my phone. And that's where composable commerce comes into play here. You can pick and choose how your search and catalog discovery process works. Maybe you like one vendor over another. You can use these UI components on this product listing page and drive them by that API. So let's pop into the product page now. And this is one thing I'll show. I'll start scrolling this down to, actually, let me go back to the product listing page here. I want to show you the responsiveness. So as soon as I switch to mobile, that facets on the left disappears, and now it's inside this full screen modal pop-up if I'm on my phone and I want to filter by activewear. Now I'm back viewing those items. And I can also, let's go back to desktop. I can also apply filters and then remove them here just to get back to the original state. Okay, so let's start shopping. This is the product page. So this is the layout you can use, and it comes with an image carousel with the thumbnails on the left in full screen mode. And I can even drag this with my mouse. If I shrink this down, this is what the mobile viewport looks like with a more stacked experience. And then on the right side here, we have the product information, the brand, the title, the price, and I can even add this to my cart. As David mentioned earlier, this is a mocked commerce engine. So we're using Next.js API routes underneath the hood to kind of give us this fake cart experience. And it does remember my state. I can play with this and I can refresh the page. And here's my cart. So in a real world scenario, you'll be hooking this up to something like Commerce Tools or Elastic Path, or even, as I said earlier, you could still use your monolithic API or even your homegrown commerce engine API to drive this, and then use this composable commerce architecture on a multi-year journey to switch off all these legacy APIs and switch into the more modern composable commerce APIs. So here's my cart in the cart drawer. Composable UI comes with two cart experiences, and you'll see this on a lot of storefronts. You'll have the cart drawer and also a cart page. Depending on your desired user experience and your type of products that you're selling and the space that you're in, you might want one or the other. Both are available for you to use here. And on the right side of this cart drawer, we have the order details and prices and promotions. There is a coupon code that I can add here. Again, this is just to showcase the UI components that are ready to use. And then once you've hooked this up to your commerce engine, this data would be driven by that remote data source. Okay, let's pop into checkout. So what we have here is a 3-stage checkout. And if I shrink this down, you get more of like a one-page vertical experience, and the cart summary is collapsed. And I'll go back to desktop though. And I can do similar things there. All right, I will pre-fill my shipping address. This is something you'll definitely want to send to a third-party API for customer address, shipping options. You'll want to dynamically load those shipping methods based on the customer's address, maybe by country or by province or state. For now, I'm just going to use that pre-filled data. If I try to click continue to payment here, we have this form and validations ready to go. So if you have things like GDPR or sign up to my newsletter, you can have these things in here as well. Okay, now I'm on the second stage under payment. And this is pay on delivery here or Stripe. So pay on delivery, we'll just push this order through to order summary. But the second real integration of Composable UI in the storefront is with Stripe. And we're using the Stripe payment elements iframe. And you always want to think about when handling credit card data, my go-to state is I want to put that inside an iframe. I don't want to touch the credit card. I don't want it going through any of my services. So with the Stripe payment element iframe, I'm putting all of that PCI payment compliance responsibility onto Stripe themselves. And they should have that. They're the experts in this space, right? So I can put in my fake credit card here. And when I click review order, this will communicate with the Stripe API, work with the payment intent API in there, and then I'll be able to fully check out. So this is the third review order phase. If the customer wanted to go back and edit their billing address or change their payment option, just a last verification screen here, and I will click place order. Okay, I think this is what I was, yeah. So remember how I mentioned the cart is actually mocked and we're using serverless functions to manage the cart. So if those serverless functions turn off, I lose that state. I lose that cart state. So let me just check out really quick again. And you won't have this issue when you're working with a real commerce API, but we thought it was kind of neat and fun to build this semi-cart management inside a serverless function, which if it turns off, we lose everything that we're storing in it. And that's what happened there. So let me just create another one. And since I did this quick enough, that serverless function didn't have time to go back to sleep, right? If this is those Lambda functions on AWS or wherever you choose to host your Next.js application, it'll be a serverless function that's turned off when it's not in use. So now I'm on the order summary page that went through, everything was happy. And now here's what the customer, myself, what I just purchased. Okay, that is it for the storefront. Now I'm going to flip back to the GitHub. All right. Let me just grab that. There we go. Okay. So that was the storefront. That was under this resources section here. And now we're going to get into some auxiliary part of this repository. So as David mentioned, this is a monorepo. So it has several things in it. It has that storefront Next.js code base. It has a Docusaurus app built to power the documentation that relates to the storefront and the monorepo and Figma and theming, and the integrations built with other teams that have contributed to this monorepo. So let's pop into the documentation. I'll just be doing a quick high-level walkthrough here. Definitely encourage you to read a couple of these pages in here, and I'll point those out. So, of course, click Getting Started. You'll get another introduction to what is composable commerce, what is composable UI. And then if you're a developer, you just want to get this thing up and running in your machine, definitely go into this installation here. We do use PMPM, so make sure you've got that installed. Make sure you're using a version of Node higher or equal to 18. And then you can just clone this repo here, copy paste this command, run pm install, and then you can fire up this storefront. And I'll be doing that later on as well. In the essentials, this is the bulk of the documentation. Definitely recommend spending some time in here and just learning about this code base. Again, what's inside it, how things work, how you configure it, all the environment variables that make this thing work. We can set up Azoulay, we can set up Stripe. We can even log in with Google if you provide a Google API key. You can use a social sign-in on that page to sign in. And there's design and theme. So as mentioned earlier by David, we use Figma, and Composable UI comes with a Figma design kit with assets that you can just copy into your Figma workspace. So your design team now has the entire storefront experience inside Figma, and they can start theming it and tweaking those experiences. And then your developers would work on implementing those changes. And we have the integrations tab here. So this is a very valuable set of information here for things like search. So if you want to set up Azoulay, or this is a third-party Clevo contribution from Clevo UI. This is one of the teams we got to work with. And then inside here, we also got to work with Voucherify for adding real discounts to the storefront. So they could show off their discount API through the Composable UI storefront, which is fantastic because now this team has a entire home page to checkout experience with which to showcase and demo their product. I think that's really cool. And we also have a CMS integration with Consia. And then if you want to do a one-click deploy to Vercel or Netlify, we can do that as well. And since I'm in here, I'm actually just going to go and deploy this to Netlify right now. Okay, so you do have to authorize to GitHub, so that might be a step you need to do. So I'll just call this demo April 23rd. And I do need to set one environment variable here for encrypting my cookies. So I'll just go, this is my secret. You can read the documentation on all of these environment variables, but this is the one you do need to set when you do a deployment to a cloud provider. So what this will do is I'll clone the Composable UI GitHub into my personal GitHub organization and then kick off the deploy. So it'll start building this. So I'm going to come back to this in a couple of minutes. The next thing we'll walk through here is Figma. And what is Figma at a high level? It's a place for your designers to work and create the desired customer experiences on whatever website you're building. It gives them the power of controlling the theming, your core theme tokens, and then they use those high-level theming primitive values and they implement those into your UI components. And now you have a brandable storefront, which is really cool. So this, again, if you want to copy this and get a version of it, you can duplicate this to your drafts. I think can you see that pop up or not? Yes, you can. Okay. So this will copy this entire asset of design info over to your Figma, and you can now this is yours. You can do whatever you like with it. So high level Figma walkthrough here. the theme tokens are critical to having a cohesive design system. Your theme tokens should drive the colors, the padding, the margins, the spacing, the borders, the fonts, every type of visual primitive in that group should be controllable by your theme and your theme tokens. So for example, your primary color, here's the different ranges of your primary color. And then we reference these colors in higher level theme tokens like primary font color, text muted. So let's go over to here. These are the color palette tokens. So now my components, my Shocker UI components and my developers, they can use this token text muted and it will get these primitives of that color. And it's the 400 level here. Primary uses primary 500. And now I have all these knobs and switches higher up in my application where if I just change my palette, it will have an impact throughout the rest of my application for all my buttons and my heading, my text, and my opacity, and my borders. So this gives you that fine level control of just changing these values has a high impact on the customer experience. And that's how you can distinguish your brand. These are your brand controls. So once we start building with Figma, we can get into things like, remember before I said CMS-driven components? So that's what we were seeing on the home page here. So this is like a banner that we call the split banner. And this is with an image on the left, with text on the right. And these are all the variants of the ways that content editors should be able to control this banner on the home page or any content page. So all of these iterations are either desktop size, image on the left, image on the right, or the mobile view. And as you scroll down, you can just see all the different permutations here. And we've implemented these into the Composable UI codebase already. So your content editors can take this doc and start composing entire page experiences together, which is what we've done already in here on the home page. So as I zoom in here, this is exactly what you see on the working Next.js storefront application. This design file was used to build that storefront experience. And if I go over here, I can see, this is what it should look like on a tablet bit width. And here's what it looks like on mobile. Notice that the main menu disappears and instead you get this hamburger menu. So this is a very, very valuable asset to have. And again, you can take this and make it your own as well. And then there's the other pages that we saw here as well, like the product page, the product listing page. Okay, let's pop over to Netlify. And this was the site that we launched earlier, 5 minutes ago. We can see that it's finished building. Here's the deployment summary. Everything looks happy, green across the board here. So let's open up the production deploy. And here it is. Here's the storefront. So when you clone this or you run this locally on your machine and you deploy it, you don't have, there's some work we need to do here to set up Algolia and Stripe. So if you click on this accessories menu button, you'll see this. So now let's just walk through how we're doing for time. Okay, actually I should switch over and pop into the code base a little bit. So let's grab my code. Okay, so I want to spend a few minutes on the code base here to help you orient yourself when you clone this and you start diving into this. This is a monorepo again, so the Composable UI storefront. This is the Next.js application right here. And then below that, we have the Docusaurus application. And again, this documentation is living and breathing. So as you update and you create new experiences in the storefront or new integrations, this can be updated to help your entire organization and team stay up to date with what you've got built and how to use it and how to customize it. And this really helps you upskill your developers as well and your business users. So as they come in, they can have all this documentation of how your composable headless storefront works and what it talks to. and get those team members up to speed much more quickly. Inside the packages directory here, we have several packages here. We have these generic data sources that we looked at earlier, driving our content on our home page, driving the cart. And if I pop into this survey so we can actually see, this is the data that's feeding that home page. And for me to query this from my storefront, I'll show you that in 2 seconds. Then I have the commerce package here as well. And we have the Clevu and Consia and Voucherify. These are the contributions to Composable UI that can add in new functionality for like search and promotions or orchestration of content from Consia. And it's really fantastic working with those folks since we've released this code base. Inside scripts, you'll have the one-time setups of installing an integration or setting up Algolia. So that's what I'll walk you through right now of setting up Algolia. Okay, let's pop to. Okay, so if you go to the Algolia dash page, you can log in and create a free sandbox, and you'll need to get 3 API keys. So once you've gone there, and all this is in the documentation, just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip actually going to Algolia to grab those. So here is my ID, my admin key, my demo products. And now once you've created your own sandbox, you can run this script here. And what that'll do, I don't think I've saved this file. This will just push the demo products to your Algolia sandbox. And then you can have that entire product listing page experience that we saw earlier running with your own Algolia instance, which I think is fantastic because then you can go into the Algolia dashboard, explore the indexes and the configurations that we set out of box by running this command. And that'll really help, I think, hammer down the value and the customization and what you can take Algolia to do for your own storefront. Okay, I think I will pause it here and hand this back over to David. And I want to make sure we have time for a Q&A. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny. That was great. So as we conclude today's webinar, I want to invite each of you to not just be a spectator, but an active participant in the evolution of Composable UI. This is more than just a toolkit, it's a community, a space where innovation and collaboration come together to shape the future of e-commerce. So if you're feeling inspired, I encourage you to explore Composable UI further. Start building. There is no better way to learn than by just getting your hands in the code and building something tangible. And as you do, consider how you might give back to the community that supports this project, whether it's through a core contribution or to enhance the framework itself, or through an integration contribution by adding new services. Your expertise can help Composable UI grow and improve. And remember, you're not alone in this. If you have an idea or a project and you want to bring it to life, reach out. We're here to provide support, to help navigate any challenges you may have, and to celebrate your achievements along the way as well. So I want to thank each of you for joining us today. Your engagement and enthusiasm make events like this webinar just not possible, but also a joy to participate in. So let's connect, continue the conversation, and start building something extraordinary together with Composable UI. And that said, I think we might have a few minutes to take in some questions. I'll pass it back to Sean.
Yes, definitely. For all of you watching live, use the comment section in the app you're in, and we'll get your questions answered. I have a long list of questions, but I wanted to start with the talking about some of the services or more of the common patterns that you've seen. So do you, I guess the place to start is what are some of the most common services that you see? Like, are you seeing product information typically in a CMS, but then the purchase information users might be in an external database? What are some of those common architectural patterns?
I could take a stab at this one. We've published Composable Commerce reference architecture white paper, which is really useful. You can find it on composable.com. But essentially, every business is going to be a little bit different, and their needs are going to be a little bit different. But generally speaking, you will always have a commerce engine for sure. You need something as a source of truth for your carts, for your orders, for the checkout experience there. We will also almost always see a content management system. That's where you will, create your pages, your content, your marketing banners, your landing pages, all of that. And then there's always a search service as well. I mean, there are ways to leverage a search functionality of the commerce engine, or even perhaps other services out there. But traditionally, we'll always look for a highly performant search service like Algolia. And then you got your payments, and you've got your analytics like Google Tag Manager, or if you have a CDP. I think I covered the main ones there. Danny, did I miss an important one?
Yeah, I think the evolution of when, once you've got the APIs and services that you're going to work with, you do need to have an orchestration of data flowing between them, especially if you're on the monolithic removal to the composable commerce architecture. You need to sync your PIM or your inventory or pricing data into the more modern commerce engine like Commerce Tools or Elastic Path or Commerce Layer. And depending on how those APIs work in the composable commerce space, you might need to also use your CMS to allow your content editors to manage content on your products and content across your entire site, of course, but also add content to the products themselves. Yeah, so the core APIs every single team will need in this space is definitely a commerce engine for pricing and inventory, and a content management system. And search it can be any like Algolia or Clevu, or even you could reuse your monolithic. It's a mixed bag, and the answer is always it depends. What's your 2-year goal? What's your 5-year goal? What's the long-term vision? How much are you willing to invest right now? The organizations getting into this space, composable commerce, are traditionally large enterprises. They've grown out of that platform box, something like Shopify, and now they need to figure out what APIs do I put together, who do I use, what do I even, where's my data coming from, what are my sources of truth. So I'll stop there because there's a lot to talk about.
For sure. And then on that note of you mentioned monolithic architectures a few times, and it's something that I'm very familiar with the composable space, a little less so with e-commerce specifically in here. And I talk a lot about gradual migration, that a great way to get into the composable space is to say, you have your current architecture. It might be monolithic, it might be archaic, it might be a number of different things, but we can gradually move you over. Is there any in the e-commerce space, do you feel like that process is any different, or maybe more valuable, more approachable? For folks
Absolutely.
who are already have an existing storefront.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's 2 things that come to mind here. One is the strangler approach. It's based on how fig trees grow, and they kind of one overtakes the other. And a lot of our customers are in that space right now, where they are on their monolithic. It might be an old version, it might not work very well. They want to move to composable commerce. How do they do that progressively, right? Because it's very difficult to just jump from one ecosystem to another. So we promote the strangler approach, and we'll say, hey, maybe you'll just switch your commerce engine. You'll keep pieces of your old platform in play, There are ways to do that and transition one service at a time. So we definitely promote that, and that's definitely possible. Another thing is a lot of our customers might be on the monolithic system today, and they might not even know that they are doing composable commerce because they may have outgrown the search capabilities of their solution right now, and they've already purchased, let's say, Algolia or a Constructor, or there's so many different ones out there, and they've already integrated with a headless service like that, and they might not realize they're already on the composable commerce journey. They just haven't maybe switched their front end, and that's where Composable UI really has a very opinionated and highly performant, toolkit to help brands with that front end piece. That's what we specialize at Orium as well. So once brands realize they've got to switch the front end, I think that's when it really kicks off. But definitely the strangler approach is possible. Progressively switching one service is definitely possible. And that's the beauty of composable commerce at the end of the day. Even once you've transitioned fully to composable commerce and you've started to use headless services for all the different functionalities on your e-commerce front ends, it's very easy from that point on to switch from one vendor to another. Maybe your search service is not cutting it for you. You want to take advantage of some shiny new AI functionality on a different search service. It's very easy to just swap out that service and keep the same front end, keep everything else perfectly in place. Just switch out one service, and that's the beauty of composable commerce. And that's something that's not possible with monolithic or homegrown systems today.
And just to
go ahead, Danny.
Sorry, just to add to that, when you do switch to something like the headless storefront for your entire front end, say, you get the huge benefit of controlling that server-side rendering portion. And with composable commerce, you're often talking to 1, 2, or 3 APIs for any given page or component on the page, and enriching that data together to create, personalized experiences, targeting certain customer segments. And those things are very hard to do or impossible on a monolithic API architecture because they're in charge of the services that happen on the server. You can only do certain things on there. You can't reach out. You can't statically build pages with external data, or even if you can, it's like a bolt-on nasty custom homegrown solution. And then, you're kind of just beholden to this kind of a monster after a while. And you can also move, as David mentioned, in steps. And we've seen customers move to just their checkout page. Their checkout is a headless, composable commerce experience. And that's a really good way of putting your foot in the door, upskilling your internal teams to learn how to think and build and work in that. And you're just doing obviously a very critical part of your storefront, but it's much smaller than the entire storefront, CMS content, your card, and all those user interactions. You're really scoping it down to one place. And then you can even do 10% of the traffic goes to that checkout and the other 90% uses the traditional one. So you can make sure you're verifying metrics across the board to make sure you're not, ruining your conversion rate with your first checkout approach. And obviously, we're here to help and chat. And there's also services in that checkout space in composable commerce that can help organizations go through with something like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about it's scoping that first project to kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, and that you can live in both of those worlds at the same time. I like that a lot. David, you said the magic word, which was AI, and that seems like it comes up in every conversation around technology today. And I know Algolia is playing around in that space, and everybody's tinkering with it in some way. How is it manifesting itself in commerce? Like, what role is AI playing in commerce, or maybe specifically composable commerce?
I mean, I think the key thing is composable commerce lends itself to AI because it's a new technology. It's something you can integrate with. And the biggest barrier in a monolithic or homegrown system is how do you integrate with these new services that provide some new functionality, some new business capability. And the beauty of composable commerce is you've got your front end. You can start integrating right away with whatever service you want. You can start building chatbots, helping customers. You can leverage. So there's so many things to say here. Let me just start with, we're seeing AI being implemented within each of the vendors individually. So content management systems will now have AI assistants to help you write content. I know Content Stack has a way of helping you generate content in your brand voice, trained with your content, with your data. So that we're seeing it manifested within each service. Search for sure. Search, there's so much to do over there. How to position products when you do a search, when you're viewing a PLP, so that on an individual level, it's targeting you and your preferences. If you search for like organic in the past, they'll start promoting organic products, things that really AI help a lot with. So we're seeing it manifested within each vendor in the ecosystem, but we're also seeing a trend where, because all of these vendors are very high on data accessibility capabilities, you're able to extract data from all these vendors quite easily, and you can pipe them in and funnel them into, let's say, a centralized data lake like BigQuery. And then you can use Vertex AI to power chatbots that are trained on your data. So if you want to have a chatbot on your site that helps customers find products for an event or answer very specific questions, you can actually pipe data from your content management system into your lakehouse, into BigQuery, have a chat, let's say Gemini running on that's grounded in your data, and have those interactive experiences with your customers. And the beauty is here, once again, composable commerce, you have full control of the front end. You can implement this quite easily. And I'm not sure you can say the same with the more traditional systems, because of all the work that you have to put in to make sure everything's integrated. And sometimes you kind of have to force things into a system that wasn't built out with that in mind when it was built. So I hope I answered your question there.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Danny?
I'm excited as a consumer. When I go shop for clothes, my most composable or conversational commerce with AI is, I go to the store. I'm going to go to a wedding. This is the theme. Here's the shoes I usually wear. This is the type of shirt I buy, or this is my size. And then it's just an assistant walking me through the entire catalog. So now the product listing page, that experience I showed earlier, clean that off, and now I have a personal assistant who knows everything about the brand, the products, me, and it's greatly going to improve discovery of products. It's going to allow that customer to discover the way they want to go through, and you're going to be feeding them exactly what they're looking for based on their questions. And the more you know about the customer, the better those shopping experiences will be over time. So I'm really excited to start shopping in that manner, and be a part of that wave of implementing that and building those conversational engines into composable commerce accelerators, and then helping brands get along with that journey.
Yeah, that is really interesting. It's like having a shopping assistant, but someone who knows way more about you and probably even more about everything that's available. Yeah, very, very cool. Okay, I want to wrap up here in a minute. The last question, one of the coolest things that I saw was actually not about the commerce itself, and this could be because it's my world a bit too, but it's the documentation, and it's a problem that I've had and have attempted to solve in different ways over time, which is essentially, we have this thing that is repeatable, or at least the core of it is repeatable, but there's a ton of value in documenting the specific elements for your clients or your stakeholders, or organization, whatever that might be. And so I think that product that you built within the experiences is very cool. And I'm curious of anything that and maybe some of the harder challenges that you solved there, or things that you learned that you didn't expect in building that piece of the product out.
I think most of it was value that we discovered. You know, having your documentation live right in the same monorepo as your code just removes all barriers, or at least 95% of the barriers. As a developer, writing documentation isn't my favorite thing. I want to live in the code. I want to push my code and deploy it. But now it's so easy for me as a developer to go in and update that documentation at the same time and keep your knowledge in sync with your implementation and the services that you're using and your business logic. And again, it just helps upskill any new developer coming in on your team, or even a business user, just to have up-to-date documentation. Because if you separate it from your storefront code base and your integrations, that thing will be forgotten over time. It's going to get pushed to the side. You'll plan to update it, but most likely you never will. So having it live inside the same code base means pull requests. If I see a pull request that doesn't have documentation updates, I will say, this is not done yet. You can't merge this code, right? So it just helps teams grow their knowledge along with their headless implementations.